Yes, Ukraine.
Where was it? Oh, dam collapse. Okay. Kakova. Dave, say Kakova.
Kakova.
No, well, is that the name? Is that how you would pronounce this? Or is it Kakhovka? Oh, Kakhovka.
Are we rolling?
Kakhovka Dam.
We're rolling?
We are rolling.
All right. Don't.
Oh, Wilson, count it. Wilson, just say it. Count it down, Wilson.
All right, I'll bring us in.
Yeah, count it down.
Rolling.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we're gonna do a bit of a deep dive into
As we do.
matters regarding insider trading, as well as new developments in Ukraine in terms of their infrastructure. So let's first define insider trading, just because it's
Sure.
sort of loosely thrown around sometimes. Insider trading is trading stocks using non-public information.
Right.
And we know that there's been a lot of controversy in the past and now in regards to what politicians do with the information they have access to that we don't. So what do you have for us?
Right. So historically, I think this issue kind of got pushed to the forefront after the 2008 meltdown. There was actually a figure being thrown around. At least 34 lawmakers changed portions of their portfolio 166 times within 2 business days of speaking with administration officials. So when the rest of the world was, stressing out about the 2008 collapse and everybody was losing their jobs, there were members of Congress that were actively profiting off of it. They knew what was going to happen in advance. They made the, trades and they profited off of it. So moving forward, the Stock Act was passed. This banned Congress from buying and selling stock based off of insider information, and it forces them to publish all of their trading activity. But as we know now, there are a lot of loopholes around this. So essentially, even if a congressperson can't make the trades themselves, they can make a trust for their wife and their kids, and they'll make the trades on their accounts. And then when you look through the numbers, you'll find out that a lot of these companies that are being, publicly traded are the same ones that these congressmen are passing legislation on. So now there's a big buzz about creating regulation forbidding congressmen and their wives and their dependents from making trades. What do you think about that? Where do you see that going?
I mean, I think there definitely should be. And it comes down to, if you have the opportunity to make these trades, I think you or I in that position would be making those trades, right? Because if you have the information if you have information on these companies, you know where legislature is going to move, why would you not use that to your benefit?
Here's the thing, though. This is why I think there's a problem with people coming into office seeking to be like these long-term lifetime politicians that haven't actually worked on their own or achieved things on their own, because they're going to look to take advantage of their position to make profit.
To take advantage of the power,
and
exactly.
You shouldn't be in office to do that.
No, 100%. And what I think is really interesting is that there's a lot of laws in effect for CEOs and people who own more than 10% of a corporation that's publicly traded, but these laws don't impact lawmakers, which is really shocking, because when you're in business to make money, but theoretically as a politician, what motive, why should you be concerned about trading stocks and benefiting from those decisions?
It's not just that, it's how do we know whether we can trust these lawmakers? I know kind of a recent example, we had the whole COVID crisis. Everybody was in a panic. Everybody was staying home. Companies were, their stock price flatlined and things were looking really grim. But at the same time, there's senators like Richard Burr. He was the chair of the Senior Intelligence Committee. And right before the lockdown began, he received information privy to members of those committee. He began selling his stocks and moving his money to U.S. Treasuries, which, as we know, are more stable during times of recession. And then afterwards, he told his brother-in-law, who immediately after called his stockbroker, started moving around his money, sold almost $300,000 worth of shares, and they received zero punishment. No prison time, no jail time, because it's very hard to prove something like this. Like, it's hard to prove, yes, even though we can see what transactions they're making, it's hard to be able to say, oh, he definitely sold those stocks as a result of whatever he found out, even though to us it might seem clear.
And it's more so based on assumptions that when they do receive this information, they communicate with their family members. And I know that Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House, she was saying that when she was questioned about her family trading, she said, oh, we're in a free market economy, we should have access to trading and stuff like that.
Speaker, Insider just completed a 5-month investigation. I think that 49 members longer and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act and the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reactions to that, and believes that members in Congress understand this be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress.
No, I don't know to this second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be. Yeah. Because this is a free market and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that. Yes, ma'am. He talked about.
And I think it's wrong. I think it's an extremely dishonest answer, because with the information that she has, it's absolutely the equivalent of insider trading for anybody who owns a company and anybody who has interest in a publicly traded company. So I think that just saying that she has those rights with that information is completely unjustified. It's similar to what, for example, Bernie Sanders, as he got into his political career, as he became wealthier, he changed his rhetoric from speaking about millionaires and billionaires should be higher tax.
Throwing those two terms around synonymously almost.
Exactly. And then when he actually, published his book, he became wealthier. To your point, we were discussing this earlier. When he became a millionaire himself, he switched his
All of
rhetoric.
a sudden, things are, being switched around. Now it's the billionaires that are the problem, or the multi-millionaires, or the 100 millionaires. So we can see a lot of hypocrisy. But I don't even, yes, Bernie Sanders is a socialist, so this kind of is a worse look for him, because he's not supposed to really care at all about his own personal,
I mean, it's hypocrisy.
But it is hypocrisy, but it's something that both parties almost, I would say, agree on this, that they kind of turned a blind eye to it for a long time. And especially if you look into past presidents, probably all presidents besides Trump within the last decade plus have come out of office. If you look at how their wealth has increased after their term, and then besides Trump, all of these presidents' net worth has doubled, whatever, tripled, because you start seeing all of the book deals, all of the speeches, and things start to become a little bit fishy when you look into, for example, the Clinton family, who came into office worth about $1 million or $1.2 million, and now 20 years later, it's like a $300 million family. And
look, here's the thing. I mean, it's one thing to talk about suspicious trades, but I think that when we specifically discuss what happens after they leave office, I think that it's completely understandable that they do have these book deals. People want to hear from them because they've had the once-in-a-lifetime experience of being president of the United States, or being, it's the family of the president if we're speaking about the Clintons. So I don't think that there's any reason not to leverage intellectual, I guess, like experience and stuff like that. Like Obama goes around giving speeches, he charges for those speeches. I think that there's a line between while you're in power to use it to make decisions and then profit off of them, as opposed to after you had your run and you're sort of preaching whatever lessons you learned, certain ideals that you have, things that you've grown to understand. I think that's a different story.
so I agree with you there if that was the only thing going on. But when you do look into the Clinton Foundation and their finances, leading up to the 2016 election, which, as we know, Hillary Clinton was seen as a front runner and she was going head to head with Donald Trump. As soon as the election ended, all of the money she was coming in from her sponsors, it dropped drastically, because all of these companies that are donating, thinking that maybe it'll get them some leverage and some perks as she's president, when they see that's out of question, now all of a sudden they're not interested. So it makes you question, is this money just because they want to hear from these, famous politicians who have done great work in office, or is it because they want this to leverage them some kinds of kickbacks?
Well, it's definitely a mix of both. I mean, at the end of the day, in a capitalist system, it's always a dog eats dog kind of world. But I guess my question to you is, and this sort of shifts people's mindsets, do you think that an economy or a government, I guess, should be run like a business? Should the president of the United States go into it thinking that he's the, CEO of the United States, quote unquote?
I think that the job as president of the United States should not be self-serving in any way. It shouldn't be an excuse for somebody to go on a power trip or anything like that. It should be done as a selfless act. You want to better the country. You don't care about your own finances. I think that the president of the United States should be someone who, maybe in the same way as a CEO, has all of the qualifications and has put in the work in their own life to achieve a better future for himself, and maybe he could leverage some of that knowledge as president. But do I believe that he should be using it as a for-profit business? I don't. However, maybe treating the United States in some aspects, prioritizing it and putting our finances and our needs above those of other countries, that's something I could see happening and working as a president.
Exactly. And I mean, yeah, moving forward, I'm pretty sure I think it's called the Ethics Act,
Mhm.
something like that,
Ethics
that's going to be passed. 4 members of the House and the Senate, or was it Congress?
It was specifically Congress, but I think also the Senate.
Exactly. And it's going to effectively restrict the trades that the members and their families can make, right?
Right. We don't know if it'll pass, but it's in the works.
I think it's the right decision.
I think so too. I think you should eliminate any possible, seeds of doubt. That shouldn't be your intention as somebody serving the United States and as an elected official. That shouldn't be a priority for you.
It's 100% the wrong motive going into office. And like you said, I mean, people sponsoring Hillary Clinton's campaign, I think we've always seen that. It's not anything new. Same thing, I'm sure, on both sides of the political aisle. You sponsor a campaign and you hope that your interests will be represented when that person is president. But specifically in terms of trading shares of a company, I think that goes a bit too far, and it's just a bit of an abuse of power.
I agree, especially when you're a part of committees that have this early access to information.
Yeah. And let's pivot to Ukraine.
Let's do it.
I guess. So we spoke to you guys about Ukraine a week ago, and since then, the latest development since Bakhmut has been the collapse of a dam. Which dam?
The Kakhovka Dam.
Very well pronounced.
I was working on it before the podcast.
So there's a lot of, I guess, controversy surrounding the Kakhovka Dam and exactly what happened to it. Just for a bit of context, it's on a piece of land that is occupied by Russia. It wasn't. This was my first thought, that it was hit by a Russian missile strike. It was not, actually. So there's a bunch of different, I guess, theories going around. But what do you think about the whole situation?
I do think that Russia was responsible, but I do know that the New York Times released an article saying that there's a slim probability that it collapsed on its own.
Well, so here's the thing. There's sort of two, I guess, competing theories. The one that most experts and engineers are leaning towards is that since in a time of war, there were less engineers directed towards maintaining the dam, it just overflowed, and water wasn't released in the way that it should have been. It wasn't maintained in the right way. And that's what caused it to overflow. The other theory is that this dam was shelled a year ago, right, by Russians. And, it's used as a bridge, right, that connects the left and right banks of the river. What do you think about Russia, meddling with this dam, right, flooding the area part of the area that they occupy, and then saying, oh, we have to withdraw troops, and then slowly start moving back without recognizing that they're losing?
Well, we did kind of start having this conversation earlier, and I know that you mentioned this might be a way for Russia to subtly and gently exit the region without facing some of the backlash and criticism from their own people. I don't think that's impossible, no, but I do think if they had a direct hand in doing this, it's not so simple as even though Russia is dominating that area perhaps in certain parts of it, it's still definitely like there's almost 150 people dead. Like I don't want to just brush by it as it's a harmless kind of incident. Like there's definitely real citizens who are being impacted.
Of course, no, I mean, just homes that were wiped out. And this wasn't even in an area that was on the front line of conflict. Like we saw with Bakhmut. I mean, Bakhmut was completely decimated, unfortunately. Right. This was an area that was more or less still residential at this point. And I think as we see impacts reverberate through supply chains and just ecological matters, the area is completely devastated. There's a lot of oil in the water that leaked because it went through oil tanks. And then on top of that, we're going to see more food shortages because it did flood these fields with essential crops.
And we've seen that happen before.
Exactly. And then this goes back to spike in food prices, and then hedge funds reinvest.
Who's going to make the money? As we talked about, the hedge funds making billions again off of buying these futures.
Exactly. And I think we can even connect that pretty directly to members of Congress, House and Senate, trading stocks, on a sort of decision. Can we connect that to decisions that they're making, right? Because in
terms of buying stocks?
Exactly.
That could be something to look into. Like if we see, for example, that there are certain members of Congress buying up on John Deere or like other agriculture and wheat-based companies, that would definitely be an example of what we were referencing. I just don't know if this is something that everybody would have seen coming. This is something that's hard to predict.
Well,
With an incident like the
specifically,
COVID crisis, if you know how we're going to respond and you know how the numbers are looking from being on certain committees, that's easier to navigate. Something like this where it hit everybody by surprise, that might be a little bit more difficult.
And I want to say overall, just going back to what we were saying about the lawmakers making decisions, and I want to go back to the point about how these laws affect CEOs, laws about insider trading, but not lawmakers. The way that I sort of see the business and economic machine falling into place is at the top, we have politicians, right? And lawmakers that regulate these things.
Right.
Then the step down, we have economics, just like the general economic situation.
The flow.
Exactly. You could call it the flow. And then business, right? Businesses that operate within themselves.
Okay.
So why is it that insider trading only affects the business level, but not the top level?
Well, that's the problem is we all agree, I think, that it should affect the top level equally. That's the point of a free market economy, is that anybody can, have a shot at making it and not worry about other people taking advantage of the system. So that's definitely a big problem, and that's why it's a good thing that certain acts are being put into motion, and we hope that they'll get passed.
Right, exactly. All right.
A little something.
Thank you guys for joining us. That's all we have for you today in regards to Ukraine and what we mentioned about insider trading. We have a really exciting episode planned on Monday. We're going to dive into conflict with Taiwan and specifically in the South China Sea, how that's affecting supply chains, companies in the United States, all interesting stuff like that.
Big time podcast coming up, like David said. We hope everybody enjoyed and you'll come back soon. See you next episode.